almost got it's videoing you right now.
Panel stand by Brett. No. This is what it's like in our trailer every day. So it gives you a little idea. Welcome, I'm so glad you came. Thank you very much for coming. We're in Springfield, Missouri, and David and Brett are running across the country. They have gone more than halfway, over pushing 1,800 miles now. And today they got a record early start, and just right before those big fats of rain started falling, we were putting the stroller in the truck and they were done for the day. So I think we're learning the value of a nice early start. I'm going to leave it to Brett. David, do you have anything you want to say?
No.
He'll be up for question and answer later. And Olivia too.
All right, we do appreciate you coming out. Tonight we have Mike and Kathy, who we got to meet personally a few days ago for the Baker Creek Spring Planting Festival, and we appreciate your generosity and everything involved there. That was a delightful experience. And Tamara, and you're from Springfield?
Well, I live out by Clever.
Okay, well, we're sure glad you came in to be here with us tonight.
I went to that Bakersville thing.
Oh, you went to that?
Monday.
Nice.
All that stuff.
So what we're doing, we are running for a GMO Free USA well, where are we at now? We're in May, so it would have been about a year and a half ago. Well, I'll even back it up farther than that. A few years ago, we showed David an internet article about a girl who went by the name of Jazzy Jasmine, who had just completed her run across the USA. She was a 17-year-old girl, and David just lit up when he heard that story. He said, I want to do that. And probably over a period of a couple of years, he kept on reminding us that he wanted to do that, and we kept on hoping that he would forget about it. And he didn't forget about it, and so finally Kris and I sat down and said, are we going to teach David that you have big dreams but you just swallow them because life is too hard and there's too many burdens to keep us from doing that sort of thing, or are we going to quit our jobs and help David achieve this dream? So here we are. We have been running now for about 3.5 months. We're averaging 20 miles a day, 6 days a week. And as we run, we pass out seed packets to people that we meet. We say, hey, we're running for a GMO Free USA. And we show them our website on the back, which is runningthecountry.com. We say, go there and you can learn more about what we're doing. And it's been really, really interesting. It's been quite an educational experience for me. I'm not a confrontational sort of person. And so when I meet people and I hand these seeds out, each time I think, okay, is this the time where this guy's going to give me the bird and he's going to start swearing at me and he's going to tell me that I'm all messed up because I don't understand that we need GMOs, and if we don't have GMOs, then billions of people are going to die. I'm still waiting for that experience, but it hasn't come yet. And we've found that once in Oklahoma, we met a GMO corn farmer who was opposed to what we had to say about GMOs. Naturally, he's growing GMO corn. And a couple of nights ago, Kris was getting ready to pick us up, and she was climbing on a fence at the time to take a sunset picture. And the guy stopped in his truck, and he had a big rig behind it. And he said, and what did he say? Asked what we were doing, and so you explained, and I think you showed him, maybe you didn't show him the seed packet, but you explained the damage that comes from GMO agriculture and how it's messing up hogs inside, so they get all ate up inside, and he responded by saying, well, I'm not convinced. And, and that's okay. It's a short message, short introduction. It's, you know, if I was raising GMO crops, and some yokel from Alaska came running down the road and told me that GMO crops were dangerous, I'd think, what are you doing in my neck of the wood telling me how to farm? So I wouldn't take kindly to it either. So the fact that we haven't gotten the bird and people haven't haven't been rude to us. Maybe that's just speaking to the generosity of the people. But overall, what we do get when we say we're running for a GMO Free USA, we got this today. We were on the Frisco Highline Trail, and we met two women who had backpacks on, and I says, hey, can I give you some GMO Free USA seeds? And they both said, sure, we love GMO Free. So they took the seeds and they said, yeah, we'll look at your website. Yesterday we did the same thing in Everton, thank you. Senior moment as always. And told her what we were doing, and she says, oh, I've got I think a sister-in-law or somebody up in the Washington area, and she says, she's all about this stuff. I'm going to tell her what you guys are doing. And so that's what we get. We find that consumers, the people that go shopping in the store, the people that eat food, when they hear about GMO Free, they're all over it. We've never yet met a person who says, wait a minute, when I go to the grocery store, I'm looking for GMOs. When I go to the grocery store, I'm looking for GMO canola. That's what I need. You know, we never ever hear that. And why is that? Because they have no benefits. GMOs have no benefits to the consumers. Should I pause for a second, or can I keep going?
No.
Okay.
I can't say the whole time.
Okay.
But I want to hear it.
No problem. I'm glad you're here.
Keep going, you're fine.
Thanks, Katie. Katie's taking good care of us here from Mama Jean, so appreciate you making this arrangement. So I could stand up here and blather quite a bit, but I'd rather not blather too much if possible. I'd rather kind of open this up to discussion, ask some questions, and I want to see if together we can answer those questions. So let's start with the basic one. The first question is, what the heck is a GMO? And I wonder if anybody sitting on the back row making faces at Olivia right now might come up here and explain what a GMO is. That would be you, David. Would you come up here and explain that? Now you got to talk loud, and I've got a mic, so you stand right here and.
I'm gonna put it into another, and hopefully it might get a certain trait from the other life form.
Talk real loud.
But it might have really bad consequences and stuff.
Okay, so for example, what in Missouri, if you went out into the field, what kind of GMO life form would you find there?
Corn, maybe?
Corn. Yeah, corn is a good one. So what does corn have in it?
GMO stuff.
Okay. Thank you, David. All right. All right. So if you go into a Missouri field and you see GMO corn, what does that mean? What's in this GM corn that makes it GM? Anybody?
The Bt bacteria.
Okay, Bt bacteria. Bt stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. And what is that? What is Bt?
It's an insecticide. That's about all I know.
Yeah, it's a naturally occurring bacteria. It's in the soil. Organic farmers can actually use this and maintain their USDA organic certification by sprinkling Bt on organic crops. So why is it okay for them to be able to do that, and why is it that some yokel from Alaska thinks that it's bad to put this Bt in corn? Why would it be okay in organic, and why would it be bad in a Bt GMO corn? What's the difference?
Well, I'll tell you what I think I know, but I
Okay.
don't know if it's right. My understanding is, and it's a limited understanding, is that when you put the Bt into the corn, because it is then, the corn itself creates an insecticide. And so then we're ingesting that insecticide. I mean, I don't know it well enough to explain it, but
Well, that's beautiful. You're right on the money. And so instead of the Bt being external to the corn, something that can wash off in the rain or something that can wash off in your sink, it is now no longer external to the corn, it is internal. It's in the corn, and every cell in the corn is producing that insecticide. Okay? So the corn itself becomes a poison. Let me say that again. The corn itself becomes a poison. Now, of course, if you read the literature, if you go to the Monsanto website and the industry websites, you'll read that this Bt insecticide is only harmful to the certain critters that it's designed to kill, and that if it's just going to go into our cars, it's not that big a deal. So corn and soy ends up being livestock food predominantly, and he said that that's why that was able to slip in. He went on to say that corn and soy has done excellent, and it's made the blind to see, and you can walk on water with it and all this stuff. So that's why it's now time for the American people to get over the yuck factor and embrace GMO wheat, because we need GMO wheat to feed the world, because billions of people are going to die if we don't do that. You know, the standard industry lie that we hear all the time. So no, we don't have GM wheat right now, but about a year ago, I think it was May last year, or it might have been the first week of June, there was a farmer in, was it Oregon or Washington, who discovered that he had some GM wheat in his field. Now this had come from Monsanto. It was Monsanto wheat. It proved to be Monsanto wheat. They tested it. Monsanto wheat had never been commercialized in the United States, but somehow it ended up in his field. And what happened to the price of U.S. wheat on the world markets?
It dropped right.
It dropped. Japan and South Korea said, GM wheat? No thank you. And they didn't say no thank you to that farmer and the wheat on his farm. They said no thank you to all U.S. wheat.
But how did he discover that? I mean, if you're planting wheat, you know, I mean, all the farmers are planting wheat. How would you know that was GMO?
He discovered, because he did use Roundup to kill off some weeds, and he found out that this wheat did not die when he sprayed this Roundup around. He said, that's weird. We should be going down with everything else. And so that's how he discovered that it was genetically modified. So all U.S. farmers were penalized because a little teeny bit of GM wheat turned up in one farmer's farm in one state. Now, is GM wheat safe for all those wheat farmers? No, it's not safe. We know it's not safe. So when we hear the argument that it's safe, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe, we have to think a little bit deeper. We have to understand that this stuff has already cost the U.S. agricultural markets billions of dollars. In the last few months, China alone has said no to several shipments of GM corn, and the latest figure I heard was $2+ billion has been lost to the U.S. Corn market because China has said no. Recently, some big minister in China was proposing that it's U.S. GM soy that is sickening 1.3 billion Chinese people. Okay. Now, if I was Monsanto, if I was Monsanto, no, that's not possible. I could never be Monsanto, but I would think if Monsanto were a person and they heard that they had this product that was causing all this trouble and all this commotion, billions of dollars being lost, I would say, we went down the wrong road. This is the wrong place to go. But no, that's not what they do. They dig in deeper and they make it harder for. They pass laws to make sure that GM is going to get the upper hand. And let's talk about a couple of those laws. It's only 2 or 3 weeks ago that Representative Mike Pompeo out of Kansas sponsored a bill. Anyone know what the hilariously funny name of the bill is? It's the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act of 2014. And the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act of 2014 was to make sure that GMOs would never be labeled anywhere. Okay? Safe and accurate food labeling.
There's one state, is it Vermont or something, that has made them, I don't know if it's Vermont, but there's one state that has make them tell that it's GMO if it is.
One state, and it is Vermont, and all we're waiting on now is the governor's signature. And from what I understand, he will sign the bill And Vermont will then be the first state to pass a standalone labeling law, meaning it's not contingent on other states passing their labeling laws. It's simply a law that says if we're going to sell GMOs in Vermont, they will be labeled. And that's a big thing to the industry, because then the industry has to produce labels, and they have to put them on the labels, and when they send their food to Vermont, they've got to have those labels. Now, if I'm living in Connecticut, across the border, and I hope Vermont and Connecticut are bordered. I'm not sure if they are, but anyway. They're close enough.
I think they are bordered, and Connecticut is one of the states that has the law that is dependent upon other states passing it too.
I believe so, yes. So if I'm living in Connecticut, and I go to my grocery store, and I want to buy my Wheaties, and I go in there and I see there's no label, but then I go across the border and I see my Wheaties have a label, how's that going to make me feel as a consumer? I'm not going to feel too thrilled about that. I'm not going to be happy to know that the people of Vermont have the right and the privilege to know what they're eating, but I in Connecticut don't have that. And the industry knows that. They know that once one state goes down this road, other states are going down that road, and eventually they're just going to have to cave in. Or they're going to get Representative Mike Pompeo to sponsor the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act of 2014, which says that no state will ever be allowed to label a GMO.
Oh my gosh, he needs to be gotten out of there.
Yep.
Well, there's a bunch of them that need to be gotten
Yes,
out of
yes,
there.
indeed.
From top down.
Yes, indeed. Representative Mike Pompeo received more money from the Koch brothers in 2010, or maybe it was 11, than any other politician. So he's kind of bought and paid for. So that's where we're at with the food labeling. Every time we think we're getting closer, they come out with something else that just, boom, it's like they're going to take away our right at a federal level and make it so that no state can do this. You all have heard of the TPP, right? TPP stands for the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it's a commercial agreement between the U.S. and like 12 Pacific Rim countries, and in there, they're saying that you couldn't pass a GMO law. It would be impossible to pass any law related to GMOs, including labeling. And so they're telling all these countries at a country level that labeling would not happen. All right? So they're going big. They're thinking really, really big about this. Now, we learned something.
Stalin, you know, he tried to start, or he did start all those people, and that's what they're trying to do now.
Sometimes it feels that way. I learned at Baker Creek at the Spring Planting Festival a few days ago. Someone came to us and said, "Do you know about I've got to make sure I read this right. It's something being called Missouri's Monsanto Protection Act." Any of you know what I'm talking about? This says, House Joint Resolution proposes an amendment to the Missouri Constitution that will, and this is in bold here, forever protect agricultural technology and modern traditional farming practices in Missouri. Now, what do you think that says? What do you think? That sounds really beautiful, doesn't it? We want to protect farming. We want to protect agricultural practices, right? So what is this really proposing?
That Monsanto can keep on doing that.
Yes, the biotechnology will be able to do whatever they're doing. And if I want to build a CAFO next to your kid's school.
What's a CAFO?
A CAFO stands for?
It's like a feed. Is that the acronym for a feedlot?
Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. Okay, that's the factory farm where I pack in 10,000 pigs in this little teeny narrow area, and these sows can't turn around because they've got bars pressed up against them their whole lives. And if I want to build that next to your house, and if I want to let all that poop run out behind your backyard, I will be forever protected. So that's what this is talking about. It's talking about modern and traditional farming practices in Missouri. Modern, that'd be a CAFO. That's something that came about rather recently. Okay, so that is going to be, if it makes it through the House and the Senate, that's going to be something y'all can vote on in the fall. And
Well, okay, the way it sounds, okay, but we vote against that, right? But
You
when
do.
it's worded,
Listen to this. This is the way it's going to read in the ballot. Shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to ensure that the right of Missouri citizens to employ modern farming and ranching practices and equipment shall not be infringed? That's what you will vote on in the fall.
so the way it's worded though, how should we vote on it?
The way it's worded, I would say, of course you want to vote yes. But if you vote yes, then you're voting for GMOs and you're voting
So
for...
you vote against it?
Yes.
So you'd vote no?
Yeah, well,
See,
if you're opposed to GMOs, you would
in
vote
there,
no.
and she wrote all this stuff up, I don't know if you guys remember, and she got sued because the way she would word stuff, where we didn't know how to vote on it. And
Well-
there was a bunch of them that sued her.
Got your mommy and your daddy, they get together and you got a baby. And that's traditional vertical breeding, okay? It goes from father, mother, son, daughter. This is horizontal breeding, horizontal crossbreeding, where you take two species that are unrelated to each other, that wouldn't give each other the time of day in the real world, and yet you get them together in a laboratory and force something from one into the other, and boom, you've got a new product that could not exist in nature. Never would happen. So it's not just breeding. Okay, this goes against nature. Nature could not produce BT corn. It couldn't do it. Okay? So it's not just breeding. By the way, BT corn is neither corn nor BT. All right? I want to say that. They call it BT corn, and it makes it sound like that. You look at it, it looks like corn, and it might have BT in it, but corn, when you take BT corn, that BT is, some people say, 1,000 times stronger in the corn, which I think makes it a whole new entity. Okay? And corn, when you eat corn, it doesn't poke holes in your guts. When bugs eat corn, they get big and strong and they bring their babies to it and say, this tastes good, eat it, it'll make you big and strong. Okay? When the bugs eat BT corn, it kills them. It's not food. All right? So it's not even the same thing. BT corn is not, just drives me crazy. Okay, so back to the church argument. So from a church perspective, from a Christian perspective, knowing that it's not just traditional breeding, knowing that we've got things coming together that can't come together in nature, could you come up with a scriptural defense to say, whoa, that doesn't work. That doesn't work in my neck of the woods. That doesn't work in my Bible. Could you come up with an argument that would, from a Christian perspective, that would say this isn't right? Well, you don't have to go very far in Genesis. You go to the 25th verse in the King James Version, and it says they will produce after their own kind. And I believe it says it 3 times. Okay? There you got it. After their own kind. You got the story of the Garden of Eden. God produced, or God given us the plants. They will reproduce after their own kind. You know, that makes it sound like that from a Christian perspective, God knew what He was doing. And then you get a Monsanto scientist walking in there and saying, whoa, wait a minute. If I put this bacteria from here and put that into this corn over here, does that sound very Christian to you? And speaking of Christian, and then I'm going to patent it. And you know what that means? That means that God didn't give me this. That means that I made it. Oh! Okay? Does that sound Christian to you?
Sounds evil.
It sounds evil, doesn't it? So it's no longer common property. This corn isn't something that God gave me. This is something that I had to buy from Monsanto. Now, if I take this corn, plant it, and then I take those seeds and replant them again next year, what's God going to think of that? Well, God gave us seeds to plant year after year after year. God doesn't make us pay a patent year after year after year, right? He doesn't make us pay a technology fee. But from Monsanto's perspective, if I save that corn and replant it the next year, I am a criminal.
Yeah.
Because I've broken the law. And Monsanto can go after me, and they have gone after farmers that do that. Okay, so from a Christian perspective, I really feel like I wish someone would come out with a book or a thesis, an essay or something that would help people wake up to this from a Christian perspective. Prior to coming on our run, David, you and I, we did a little fundraiser around a track in Sitka, down at Moeller Field. and it was raining and blowing. It was miserable weather that day, and it was just Sitka, and we were on our second or third lap, and this guy ran onto the field, and he ran up to us, and he said, "Are you guys the guys that are running for GMO Free?" And we said, "Yeah, we were wondering where he was going to go with this." He says, "I love you guys," and he says, I'm the pastor of the local such and such church, and I'm going to say a prayer for you." And we kept on running. And he opened up and started praying for us as we ran around the track. And boy, it was a cool prayer, because usually a prayer is, closed and everything. But here we're running around the track, and he's praying to God, and he's blessing us. And he says, "When I go to church, I tell people about this stuff. I tell people about GMOs. And I tell them how evil it is and how wrong it is." And I thought, that's a beautiful thing. And I kind of thought that it would be understood. I thought it would be known from a Christian perspective that patenting something that God gave us just doesn't quite square very well with the Bible. All right? But I'm finding now that many of the good people around here who are going to church on Sunday are planting GMOs on Monday. And they don't think anything about it because it's just breeding. That's what they've been told, and that's what they believe. And I would love to have, Caleb, when you grow up, you join the ministry or whatever. Tamara, when you go to church, when you guys go to church, you could say, "Wait a minute," whatever it is. If that's part of your life, you could help spread that word from that perspective. And I bring that up. It's important. Monsanto seeks out scientists who will give their blessing to their products from a science perspective. They also seek out religious leaders who will give their blessing so that the community will follow them. William Engdahl tells the story of how they were pressuring the Vatican, hoping for a statement from the Pope that he would say, "Yes, we need GMOs to feed people, or billions of people will die." And he tells the story that the people were able to gain an audience with him and explain the principles that he teaches in his book, Seeds of Destruction, and let them know that the GMOs are actually a systemized plan to take over the world's food supply, and that they are not necessary to feed the world's population. And the Pope never did make that statement, thank goodness. So whether they're going for the authority of science or the authority of God, that Monsanto is looking for anybody with authority to bless their business, and then they can say, "Look, we got blessings from him, we got blessings from her, and if you don't believe it, you're just missing the boat here, because we need these things, because if we don't do this, billions of people are going to die." So maybe I'm going to just finish up with that concept. This is called "We're Monsanto, Feeding the World Lie After Lie." The biggest lie is that if we don't go with GMOs, billions of people are going to die. Have you heard that before? Okay, that is, I have to hand it to the people that came up with that one, because it's a beautiful, beautiful lie. When I turn on the TV and I see pictures of poor African kids with their stomachs out to here and their arms like this, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want them to die. And if I hear that GMOs could possibly save them and billions of other people, that opens up my heart. And that's exactly what they want. They want my heart to be open to that lie. Because if my heart is open to that lie, then I'll say, "Yeah, okay, if we need them, let's do it. Let's go with it." But now we know, after 15 years of growing GMOs, we know that small-scale organic farming will feed the world far better than agribusiness will feed the world. Small-scale organic farming is sustainable, can be sustainable when we're planting millions and millions of acres of corn or soybean down in Argentina. We're actually decimating biodiversity. We're actually setting ourselves up for another famine. You got 3 or 4 crops that we're dependent upon instead of hundreds of crops, and we're drying up the Ogallala aquifer. We're killing off the soil. We know every year we apply more Roundup to the soil. We're killing it. We're sterilizing the soil. That is not sustainable over the long term. You kill your soil, you don't feed billions of people. The whole thing's a lie. From beginning to end, it's a lie. We're Monsanto, feeding the world lie after lie. So anytime you start hearing Monsanto talking points, start thinking about, well, what's their angle? Where are they coming from? Why are they saying this? And where are they going with that? If enough people start becoming aware of that, we can withstand the lies. We can stand up to them. And even if some Joe PhD gets on TV and says, or I can say Representative Pompeo, if he gets up and says says these are safe. Science speaks with a unified voice. All scientists agree that GMOs are safe. And then he says, no one has ever gotten sick from a GMO meal. He said that. If you start to hear that, you go, oh, there's those talking points. He's been infected. He is now, he must got the GM DNA inserted into him somehow. And usually it's through the back pocket with a whole lot of money.
It's all about money, everything is.
Yes.
That's the bottom line on all of it.
Yeah. So I've been blathering. I've told you I wasn't going to do that, and I did it anyway, and I'm sorry. We blog at runningthecountry.com. We have the Facebook group and page, Running the Country. You can join us. You can like us on Facebook or become our friends on Facebook. Follow us. We've got materials over here. We've got my book. We've got some other materials. We've got Boycott Kellogg's buttons from GMO Free USA. We wear those. I should have had that button on here right here tonight, and I didn't get that on. But we're boycotting Kellogg's, not because they are the only company out there that's pushing GMOs, because most big companies are. It's just that they're one company. They're a big company. They're an iconic company. If we can get Kellogg's to start losing their profit because of pressure, public pressure, and then they say, whoa, we can't put up with this anymore. And then they change and they get rid of the GMOs and we start buying it again and their profit level starts going up, then other companies will say, oh, we get it. Let's ride the wave. Let's get rid of the GMOs. And we can, whether the government's going to help us out or not, we consumers can have some power by what we choose to buy in the grocery store. We can also have some power. Tomorrow there is a divest Monsanto protest going on. There's like 14 different cities in the United States. And they figure the idea is, let's hit Monsanto in the pocketbook. So they're having protests saying, if you've got stock, find out if it's Monsanto stock. And if it is, get rid of it. Sell, sell, sell. And when enough people start selling Monsanto stock, that turns into a junk stock. If enough people do that, Monsanto says, ouch. Maybe it's time for us to change our ways. Wouldn't that be the day? We'd love to see that happen.
I wouldn't want their stuff.
So, questions. What did I leave out? What do you want to cover? If anything you want to say, that if I got something wrong, let me have it.
What about a corn like the peaches and cream corn? I assume that's genetically modified, but does that necessarily mean it's got poison in it?
I have never heard of a peaches and cream corn. I assume you're talking about a hybrid corn?
It is a hybrid, and hybrids are not genetically modified, so it's not. It's just a hybrid. And peaches and cream is a sweet corn. And right now, most genetically modified corn, very little sweet corn is genetically modified. It's more the field corn that's used for crop system. There's very little sweet corn that's genetically modified. And that's part of the problem, is that a lot of people don't understand the difference between hybrids and genetically modified. Because hybrids are crossing of two like things.
Yes.
Two similar things. And a hybrid is not necessarily bad, but it's not genetically modified.
Right. A hybrid is not GMO.
Yeah.
That is correct.
And that's a big confusion. I get questions like that all the time, on emails and whatever.
Yeah.
But people don't understand the difference between the two.
Right. Okay. And so there's no poison injected into a hybrid. That's not what it's there for.
The worst thing about a hybrid is that they won't reproduce their own. Peaches and cream corn, I can't save the corn from the corn seed from that peaches and cream and grow it again next year because it won't reproduce as this time.
Right.
So that's the bad thing about a hybrid. But hybrids themselves are not necessarily bad other than that from that point of standpoint.
Okay.
Do you know anything about yellow rice or gold rice?
Okay. The question from Caleb is golden rice, or as William Engdahl calls it, puke-colored rice. But I wrote an essay. I gave a talk back in Sitka, and I posted that on my blog, and I titled it, I think it's 14 Things the Industry Does Not Want You to Know About Golden Rice. So golden rice was marketed, well, first off, define golden rice. What is it?
Well, it's genetically modified rice that has more
Beta-carotene.
Vitamin in it.
Beta-carotene.
You're right. And it's marketed to help children blindness.
Yes.
Third world
Okay.
countries.
So the marketing angle is, if we can take vitamin or beta carotene, which converts into vitamin A in our bodies, then all of these millions of people around the world who are subsisting on basically a rice diet, we can prevent a host of illnesses, and they always point to blindness, childhood blindness, and the industry will often say organizations like Greenpeace are responsible for keeping 50,000 children blind a month. If we had let this stuff go to market. Okay, so that's their angle. Let's get this to market. Let's save all these people from going blind. So there's all sorts of problems with golden rice, and some of this is just repetition. Golden rice will contaminate, right? Because it is a GMO. So if I'm living over in Asia and I'm partial to my rice that I've been eating for a heck of a long time, and someone else is growing GM rice next to me and it contaminates mine, what's that going to do for the value of my rice? Yeah, it's going to go down. Okay, and I posted a whole bunch of other arguments about why this is a problem. One is that it's the GM technology itself is a problem. When you insert the gene, it's not like you put this cute little beta carotene in here and nothing else changes and the rice remains what it is. We know that the DNA strand, up and down the strand, there's collateral damage. The genes get turned on, proteins get turned off, there's upregulation, downregulation, and it becomes a different plant. It becomes unstable, and we don't know whether that's going to cause allergies with people. There's a host of problems. When they did testing with golden rice in China, they did not tell the participants that what they were eating was genetically modified because they knew it was so controversial, they knew that people would not eat it. So here it is that they've proposed a solution. They can't even tell test subjects what it is because they know they wouldn't eat it. So what kind of solution is that? But what were some of the other things that I mentioned in my blog that are problematic with it? Oh, again, it's patented, and so it's not free to the world. They say that they would give it free to poor people, but once they've sold a certain amount of it, then they have to start paying the royalties on it. So again, it's another marketing program that would take over rice, which is one of the world's leading staples for millions of people, and all of a sudden these big companies would then own the rice just the way they own the corn and the soy here. So it's just another way of breaking into the market.
Is it true that brown rice already has enough beta carotene in it, and that yellow rice or golden rice, you need to eat pounds of it every day?
It is true that you have to eat far, far more than is possible. You'd have like 15 or 16 pounds a day to get the beta carotene. It's also true that rice, your body cannot assimilate the beta carotene without having a sufficient amount of fat in your diet. And so that's another problem because these people are poor, they're not getting the fat that other people would be getting. So even if the beta carotene is there, they likely would not be able to assimilate it. So rather than proposing a solution that's made up from eating a diverse diet, from a wide range of products, a healthy diet, because it's not healthy to just eat white, whether it's to just eat rice, whether it's genetically modified or not. They propose to put beta carotene in rice, and boom, that's the solution. And you said, is brown rice, does it have beta carotene? No, brown rice is just rice with the outer shell that's still on it. I forget the technical term for it, but they polish that off.
The germ.
And then they just leave the inside part. That's the white rice that's left behind. The whole brown rice is healthier because the outside part does have all sorts of vitamins that you're getting rid of when you get rid of that.
Okay.
Kind of the same between refined wheat and whole wheat.
Yeah.
The whole wheat has the outside still.
Yeah. So if you can go back to like December of my blog, Running the Country, and you can read my 14 arguments. And we recorded that presentation, and you can watch the presentation as well if you'd like. Okay. Golden rice is another one of those brilliant marketing ploys because right now there are no consumer benefits to GMOs. But if we can say it solves blindness, boom, you cracked open my heart. Because I'm thinking, ooh, if they can do that, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's worth all the other collateral damage that comes from GMOs if we can solve blindness with it. So they've got to come up with something to make these circus animals have to start doing some tricks, or we're not going to buy it. Right now we're just not buying the argument because there is no benefit. If I walk out here and look for GMOs because of some perceived benefit, I'm not going to find any benefit. It's not there.
Are there any cases that you know of where humans have been poisoned by GMOs to the point that causes death or causes serious illness?
Scientifically, it's very difficult to point to one thing and say that. We do know that there are about 30 different illnesses that have gone up with the introduction of GMOs and glyphosate. Usually, if you look at tobacco, usually people don't take their first puff and then die. Usually it takes many, many puffs over many, many years before an illness is manifest. And we know with what happened with tobacco in the tobacco industry, once we started to get an inkling that this wasn't healthy, the tobacco industry defended vigorously. And they came out with all sorts of studies proving that tobacco wasn't the problem. It was this, it was that, it was all this other stuff, right? Till finally the evidence was so overwhelming, then they had to say, okay, it's the tobacco, who do we pay? And the lawsuits started coming and they had to pay lots of money, which of course the tobacco smokers had to absorb because they're the one buying the cigarettes. But anyway, so usually GMOs usually aren't going to affect people that way. It's a chronic poison, it's a chronic toxicity that builds over time. If I eat a little bit of corn or something that's got GMOs in it, usually it's not going to cause me to drop dead. And I say usually because there have been cases where someone's eating some corn, it's GM, and they get sick from it, and they might have an anaphylactic shock reaction. There may have been people that have died from it. I don't know that. I have heard people say, I watched my kid eat this corn, he went into an anaphylactic shock state, and he hasn't been able to eat corn since. And the moms across America, they talk about their kids getting better when they get off of GMOs. They say they're sick on GMOs, they're healthy when they get off. They didn't need a doctor to tell them that. They know it from their own kids. They know what their kids are like and how they improve when they get off the GMOs. So, that's not a double-blind, placebo, randomized test that could be repeated. It's just anecdotal evidence which doesn't have any scientific value whatsoever. But if you're a mom, if your kid gets better when you take them off GMOs, it has a heck of a lot of value.
There's a website called Natural Cures, Not Medicine.
Yes.
And on that website, they have a cow. They show a cow that was fed GMOs, and he is gross. He doesn't even look like a cow. And that's all they had fed him, and that's,
Along that line, Howard Vlieger, V-V-L-I-E-G-E-R. Howard Vlieger, he's an Iowa pig farmer. He did some research with Judy Carmen out of Australia. And the research was feeding pigs GMOs, feeding them conventional, feeding them Roundup, and then cutting open the pigs and taking a look at the guts. And that study came out over a year ago, and when you get the slides and look at it, you go yuck. And you see that the pigs that are fed the GMO feed, their intestines are ulcerated. And we heard that at the Spring Planting Festival when someone came up and said his family relation was, they were in the business, and they said nowadays they open up the pigs, and he said they are all ate up inside. And say again?
That's a quote.
That's a quote. They are all ate up inside. Okay? And Vlieger and Carmen verified that scientifically. So if you're into the subject and you want to see more, go to YouTube and Google Howard Vlieger and watch his presentation. He goes around the nation, around the world maybe, giving the presentation. We had the opportunity to watch him in person when we flew down to California. He flew down at the same time, was sponsored by Moms Across America, and he started giving presentations there. And he's got a great slideshow, and he's a farmer. I'm that yokel from Alaska, so when I start talking about farm stuff, Mike knows I don't even know how to put my truck into four-wheel drive. He had to help me do that the other day.
We did get four-wheel drive at our house.
So, well, I'm not even going to go down that road, but okay. So Howard Vlieger is a farmer, an Iowa pig farmer. He says, we've done the studies. So he has the authority to speak as a farmer to farmers. And I love that there's farmers out there that are doing that. I love that there's farmers that can now look at the numbers, they've crunched the numbers, and they've seen that the GMO technology is not working. And so they're switching back to conventional. Questions, comments? Rotten tomatoes?
Are the Mennonites and the Amish, are they using GMOs?
According to Kathy, Mike, and Dave, yes. And according to what I heard, I'm not an expert in the subject at all, but Dave, a new friend of mine that I just met, they're using it and they have no concerns over it because it's just breeding. GMOs, it's just breeding. It's no different than a hybrid. It's no different than anything else. So they're using it, I believe, because they haven't been educated on what a GMO is, and they bought the Monsanto story hook, line, and sinker. I believe if they knew what it was from a Christian perspective, they might say, "Ooh, that's not what we thought."
Yeah, that's true.
Do you know if there's any truth to the theory that the BT gene in the corn, you eat it, goes into the bacteria into your stomach, and it actually may be killing the bacteria in your stomach? The genes of the... Have you ever heard of
It can even modify your DNA, can it?
Well, I can only repeat what I've heard from Jeffrey Smith. And we know that Roundup is an antibiotic, so it's killing off our gut bacteria. And Jeffrey Smith says that there's a lot of evidence to suggest that when you eat the BT corn, that bacteria stays alive inside you. It can transfer to your gut bacteria, turning your gut bacteria into a pesticide-producing factory, which means it just keeps putting out BT inside of you, and it doesn't stop. I don't know whether that's true or not. He proposes that because we have BT now inside of our bodies. It stays there. It's present all the time.
So if you stopped eating GMO now, how long would it take you to get rid of it? Would you ever get rid of it?
I couldn't possibly answer that. I do believe that the human body is resilient. They say that people that have smoked for 30 years, if they stop smoking for 2 weeks, their lungs are back to a much better state. Their blood vessels are back to a much better state. And they astounding figures. I forget the exact verbiage, but the body does respond, is resilient, it heals. But I really don't know the answer.
But people like Jeffrey Smith, they just have article after article after article by doctors and scientists and so forth that do address many of those things. I don't know about that specific question.
Yes.
But, and this is something that Mike and I talked about before, where are the studies there? Why don't people know about these studies? Well, if you go to Jeffrey Smith's website, you're going to see some of these studies.
Responsibletechnology.org. That's the Institute for Responsible Technology. The website is responsibletechnology.org. If you haven't been there, our bacteria do have that pathway. The same pathway that the bugs have, that when they eat the BT corn, it kills them. Okay, our bacteria has that same thing. All right? So that's what the BT is. And by the way, the BT corn is registered with the EPA as a pesticide. Not a poison thing, but the corn itself is a pesticide. When you pick that up and you eat it, you're eating a pesticide. Hey, good to see you. Tell me your name again.
Caleb?
Caleb. Your last name?
Gose.
Gose. Brett. Good to see you again. Is your family coming?
No. We'll make it.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
So, everyone here was at the Baker Creek Festival a few days ago. So this is like a family reunion almost. We met Caleb and his family, and we actually interviewed Caleb the other day, aimed the camera at him, and he knows a heck of a lot about this stuff. So I'm glad you're here. You can contribute to the discussion. Okay, so we've got the BT. That's the one of the two major definitions of what a GMO is. The other one, besides the BT, is it's safe enough to drink. It's safer than table salt. It's safe enough for your kids to play around. It's organic. These are all the things that Monsanto has said about it over the years.
Is it the glyphosate?
Glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. Okay, so the other major type of GMO is the Roundup Ready GMO. And Monsanto discovered years ago that there was a particular bacteria that did not die in the presence of Roundup. Okay, so you've got this noxious poison that kills everything. They find a bacteria, it does not die, and they say, great, let's put that in our food supply. And that's what they did. They isolated the gene from the bacteria, and they put it into the corn, or they put it into the soy, and then they say, look, we've got something now that is Roundup ready. That was the industry phrase. It sounds really beautiful too. This is wonderful. And if I was a farmer, and I learned that I could buy this corn or this soy, and that I could drench it with Roundup, and everything would die except for my crop, I would be in hog's heaven, right? I would think this is the greatest thing ever. And in fact, many farmers did. They looked at it, they saw the numbers, and they saw the argument, and then they know how many times they're having to spray before, and now they've got something, and their plants are totally immune to it. It doesn't touch them, it doesn't hurt them, and those weeds are going to be gone. And so the industry line was that the Roundup use would go down, because everything else would be dead. You wouldn't need to spray as much. So that's the way it was presented to the farmers. Now, 15 years later, what do we know about that line?
The use has gone up.
The use has gone up. The Roundup use has gone up, and we know that scientifically. They've crunched the numbers, and they see that the use of Roundup has gone up considerably from where it was 15 years ago. And why would that be?
Because the resistance of the weeds has gone up.
The resistance of the weeds has gone up, okay? So in nature, if you poison something long enough, eventually things will adapt, things will change, and they'll start saying, you know, this poison isn't all that bad. I'm better than this poison. I can handle this poison. And naturally, the plants and the bugs that resist, they're the ones that get to reproduce. So they pass on the resistance to the ongoing generations, and they get stronger and stronger. So now, all these years later, we now have super bugs and super weeds. All right? So in the short term, the argument looked really good, and it seemed pretty promising. But then we've found that now we have super bugs and super weeds. Now, I might look at that as an outsider and say, well, that's failed technology. It didn't work. In fact, things are worse now than ever, because now we have super bugs and super weeds. What are we going to do with that? But that's me as an outsider. If I'm Monsanto, how do I spin this?
I'm going to make it stronger than the weeds.
I'm going to make a new poison. I'm going to make something else that's better and stronger, that's going to solve your problem. And guess what it's going to be? It's going to be another chemical. So the farmers then get wrapped up on this chemical treadmill. It was chemicals that was the big solution in the first place, and Monsanto is a chemical company, so it comes out with new chemicals, which means more profit for Monsanto. Do you think Monsanto is ever going to come out with a solution that does not include Monsanto as being the solution? No, why would they do that? That's not what corporations do. So they get ready to pump out more and more chemicals, and whether it's, we've got the USDA getting ready to approve 2,4-D corn, and 2,4-D we know is half of the chemical composition of Agent Orange. And we've been using 2,4-D for a long time, but now they've got a bacteria that resists 2,4-D, and so they want to start planting GMO corn and 2,4-D resistant corn and soy, just the way they did with Roundup. In fact, they want to do it with both of those traits in there, so they can spray 2,4-D and Roundup, and we end up eating that stuff. So we mentioned superbugs and superweeds as being a couple of the problems. Now let's talk about the 3 patents that are on Roundup. Roundup is patented to be 3 different things, or it has 3 different characteristics. Do you remember what the first one was? Back in the 60s, they discovered that, or they patented Roundup or glyphosate to be as a metal chelator, which means it binds to metals. And so when you put that Roundup in the soil, all the metals in there and the minerals that are metallic, they bind to the Roundup, and that makes we know from research that makes the Roundup multiple times more toxic. Okay? So when Monsanto tests glyphosate, it always tests it all by itself. It's just glyphosate. But Roundup is not glyphosate. Roundup is glyphosate plus a proprietary blend of adjuvants that increase the toxicity of the glyphosate. Okay? So now we've got glyphosate that's got metal chelated to it, which means, sometimes it means that the plants cannot absorb that stuff. These plants need these minerals in the ground. They need the metals to grow strong bodies the way they're supposed to grow. And they've actually done scientific studies breaking down the mineral content of the GM corn versus the traditional corn, and they found that the GM corn is a nutrient deficient, loss of words, but it's got far less minerals and nutrients than it was supposed to have. Calcium was like 400 times less than the conventional corn had. Okay, so glyphosate was first patented as a metal chelator. It's also been patented as an herbicide, of course. It's also patented as a powerful, anybody know? As an antibiotic. So glyphosate itself is patented as an antibiotic. Now, when you eat glyphosate, and you do, we all eat glyphosate in our society. We know nowadays through studies that we are peeing glyphosate. And we learned 3 or 4 weeks ago now that mothers are breastfeeding glyphosate to their babies. And think about the women that went and had this test done, these breastfeeding mothers. These were progressive mothers who were aware of glyphosate in the first place. They were concerned about it. So they were probably the type of mothers who were more likely to be eating organic. And yet even with these mothers, they found that they're feeding glyphosate to their kids, okay, through their breast milk. All right, so an antibiotic goes into your stomach, and what does it do to your gut bacteria? Kills them. And we know through the science that it's killing the good stuff, and it's letting bad stuff grow. And when you do that enough, when you keep a constant supply of glyphosate running through you, messing up your gut bacteria, we know 70 to 80% of our immune system comes from the health of our gut bacteria. So if we constantly live in a state where our gut bacteria is dead and sick and fighting off this glyphosate, what does that do for our immune system? It messes things up. And nowadays we know we cannot prove scientifically, because there's so many things involved in the cause of disease. We know of people who have a host of reproductive issues, digestive issues, neurological issues. It's everything and it's everywhere, and it's frightening. What do I believe? Well, you all know what I believe, and that's why we try very, very hard to stay away from glyphosate and try to eat the organics as much as possible. Okay, so we've covered the two main types of GMOs, and they are again the BT and the Roundup Ready. Okay, so. The big industry line is, and I read this just last night in the Ogden Standard, which we came from Utah originally. Some 14 years ago, we moved from Utah up to Alaska. My mom called me and says, "Brad, there's an article in the newspaper about GMOs." So we got online and read the article, and the article said that basically it said scientists agree that GMOs are safe. Okay, and that is an industry talking point. Anytime you hear scientists agree that the GMOs are safe, you're listening to the industry speak. Because I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, that 100% of scientists do not agree that GMOs are safe. There are numerous scientists out there that urge that we exercise the precautionary principle. And then there are others that say, the heck with the precautionary principle, these things are dangerous. Don Huber, said we have already sacrificed a generation of our children. He wrote a letter to Secretary Vilsack, Secretary of the Agriculture, in 2011, and warned of all of these potential problems that he saw, and never got a response. They went to Washington, D.C., presented the information, never got a response. But he sees all sorts of problems that are there, so he's not tiptoeing around careful language. He says we've already sacrificed a generation of our children. And he says, if you look at back when we were kids, Okay. At what rate did autism occur?
Not afraid it is now.
We hardly knew of it.
Yeah.
The rate I heard was about 1 in 10,000. And nowadays, most recent count, we're looking at 1 in 68. That's in a period of 30 or 40 years. The projection, if it continues at the same rate, by the year 2025, 1 out of 2 boys will be autistic.
Well, another thing, back, in my grandmother's day, and my grandmother died when she was 86, but there was no such thing as Alzheimer's. My grandmother was sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
And all her friends were. I didn't even know anything about that until, this other generation. So I think that's
Right. Alzheimer's is another one that could be very much connected to the poisons in the foods that we're eating, as well as many others. Okay? All right, so just when we talk about safety, we naturally go to physical health or medical issues. But in what ways do we know beyond a shadow? Corn itself becomes a poison. Let me say that again. The corn itself becomes a poison. Now, of course, if you read the literature, if you go to the Monsanto website and the industry websites, you'll read that this BT insecticide is only harmful to the certain critters that it's designed to kill, and that it can't hurt us at all because we don't have the right pathways, so it just passes through us and boom, it's gone. No problem, no consequence whatsoever. That's the industry line. And yet we've known for a few years now that mothers have the BT toxin in their blood. It's in placentas, it's in umbilical cords, and so it bioaccumulates. The BT bioaccumulates in the body. And we also know that our gut bacteria is filled with what? Well, our gut, excuse me, I gave you the answer there. Our guts are filled with bacteria, right? Okay? And our bacteria do have that pathway. The same pathway that the bugs have, that when they eat the BT corn, it kills them. Okay? Our bacteria has that same thing. All right? So that's what the BT is. And by the way, the BT corn is registered with the EPA as a pesticide. Not a poison thing, but the corn itself is a pesticide. When you pick that up and you eat it, you're eating a pesticide. Hey, good to see you. Tell me your name again. Caleb. Your last name? Gose. Brett. Good to see you again. Is your family coming?
No.
Well, I'm glad you're here. So, everyone here was at the Baker Creek Festival a few days ago. So this is like a family reunion almost. We met Caleb and his family, and we actually interviewed Caleb the other day, aimed the camera at him, and he knows it. They're not safe for the
free market. They destroy competition because they give all this money, all these subsidies to the large farmers. They give the patents and they protect Monsanto. So it hurts other farmers who want to produce
Okay, so
naturally or organically.
you're saying they're not safe on the free market because of subsidies. They give an advantage to the big agribusinesses. The small family farmers get pushed aside. It's harder for them to do business. Okay, so we know from that angle, GMOs are not safe. And of course, that's not necessarily the plant itself or the technology itself. What that is the way we do farming in the U.S. with the Farm Bill that has given an advantage to the big agribusinesses, right? Okay. In what other ways are GMOs not safe? Okay, let's pretend that I'm not a yokel from Alaska, but I'm actually an organic farmer in Missouri. In what way are GMOs not safe for me?
Because they're contaminating your organic crops.
That's right.
Yes, I've put in generations with my people, my seed, passed it down for generations, and I consider this stuff to be part of my blood. Okay, and then I go out there one day and find out that I'm using Roundup around the outside of a field. No, I can't do that if I'm organic. But anyway, I discovered that somehow the corn is Roundup resistant, which means it's been contaminated. Now, I didn't buy it, and I didn't want it, because I'm selling organic. That's a product. When you sell organic, that's something people want. Now, if I go from being organic and all of a sudden I'm contaminated, am I going to get more or less money for my corn? I'm going to get less money because people buy and eat organic corn. Where is most of the GM corn going?
Cattle.
Cars and cattle, mostly cattle. And cars in the form of ethanol. Okay? So most of the GM corn isn't going into the human food supply, but I've got this organic corn. Now it's contaminated. So are GMOs safe? From my perspective, no. If the USDA, the FDA, and the CIA, and the FBI, and the President Obama, if all of these people determine without a shadow of a doubt the GMOs are safe, does that mean that they're going to be safe for me as an organic farmer? No, never. By definition, they can't be safe because they contaminate. GMOs contaminate. And we have examples of industry people saying that contamination is inevitable. They know it, and many people say that that's part of the plan. Once everything is contaminated, there's nothing left to fight for. There is no longer a choice. You don't get to go to a grocery store like Mama Jean's and say, I want to buy organic corn chips because nothing will be organic anymore.
Well, now, doesn't America, they don't have any wheat anymore. I think they sold their last wheat several years ago, and we don't have any stored wheat. Now, do they do the same thing with wheat?
GMO wheat, Monsanto has developed GMO wheat, and it was 8 or 10 or 12 years ago that they tried to commercialize it, but what happened in the United States? It was rejected. And the American people said, no way. And I think probably the wheat farmers said no way. Now, why is it that the wheat farmers said no way and they were able to do that, but the corn and the soy farmers went with the GM crops?
Why was it?
Why do you think it was?
I want to know myself.
Henry I. Miller, who is not one of my best friends, he has been an advocate of genetically modified crops for a long time, and he used to be a proponent he was a tobacco lobbyist many, many years ago. He wrote an article in the New York Times, or an editorial piece recently, and he said in there that the reason the wheat was pushed back was because humans eat wheat. And we humans tend to be a little bit queasy about putting bacteria in our food. We tend to think, there's a gross factor there, or a yuck factor there. But because the corn and the soy was being fed to our pigs, we thought, they're just pigs, give it to them. You know, who cares? We're not that concerned about it. If it's just going to go into our cars, it's not that big a deal. So corn and soy ends up being livestock food predominantly, and he said that that's why that was able to slip in. He went on to say that corn and soy has done excellent, and it's made the blind to see, and you can walk on water with it and all this stuff. So that's why it's now time for the American people to get over the yuck factor and embrace GMO wheat, because we need GMO wheat to feed the world, because billions of people are going to die if we don't do that. You know, the standard industry lie that we hear all the time. So no, we don't have GM wheat right now, but about a year ago, I think it was May last year, it might have been the first week of June, there was a farmer in, was it Oregon or Washington, who discovered that he had some GM wheat in his field. Now this had come from Monsanto. It was Monsanto wheat. It proved to be Monsanto wheat. We tested it. Monsanto wheat had never been commercialized in the United States, but somehow it ended up in his field. And what happened to the price of U.S. wheat on the world markets?
It dropped rapidly.
It dropped. Japan and South Korea said, GM wheat? No thank you. And they didn't say no thank you to that farmer and the wheat on his farm. They said no thank you to all U.S. wheat.
But how did he discover that? I mean, if you're planting wheat, all the farmers are planting wheat, how would you know that was GMO?
He discovered because he did use Roundup to kill off some weeds, and he found out that this wheat did not die when he sprayed this Roundup in the ground. He said, that's weird. Now we should be going down with everything else. And so that's how they discovered that it was genetically modified. So all U.S. farmers were penalized because a little teeny bit of GM wheat turned up in one farmer's farm in one site next to your house, and if I want to let all that poop run out behind your backyard, I will be forever protected. So that's what this is talking about. It's talking about modern and traditional farming practices in Missouri. Modern, be a CAFO. That's something that came about rather recently. Okay, so that is going to be, if it makes it through the House and the Senate, that's going to be something y'all can vote on in the fall. And
Well, okay, the way it sounds, okay, but we vote against that, right? But the
You
way
do.
it's worded,
listen to this. This is the way it's going to read in the ballot. Shall the Missouri Constitution be amended to ensure that the right of Missouri citizens to employ modern farming and ranching practices and equipment shall not be infringed? That's what you will vote on in the fall.
so the way it's worded though, how should we vote on it?
The way it's worded, I would say, of course you want to vote yes. But if you vote yes, then you're voting for GMOs and you're voting
So
for...
you vote against one,
Yes.
so you'd vote no.
Yeah.
See,
If you're opposed to
Carnahan
GMOs,
was
you
in
vote.
there and she wrote all this stuff up, I don't know if you guys remember, and she got sued because the way she would word stuff, where we didn't know how to vote on it. And so there was a bunch of them that sued her, and it sounds like something Carnahan did.
But that's typical.
Yeah, it is typical. Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act. Okay, when it's not a labeling act. No, it's something that's going to prohibit labeling. This is what it says. Actually, this is a quote. Section 35. This would be an amendment in your Constitution, in the Missouri Constitution, that agriculture, which provides food, energy, health benefits, and security, is the foundation and stabilizing force of Missouri's economy. To protect this vital sector of Missouri's economy, the right of farmers and ranchers to engage in modern farming and ranching practices shall be forever guaranteed in this state. No state law shall be enacted which abridges the right of farmers and ranchers to employ agricultural technology and modern and traditional livestock production and ranching practices unless enacted by the General Assembly. Now, why would this sort of thing be coming out in Missouri right now? The answer is because there are municipalities and other places that are doing the opposite of this. We know in Oregon they've got a vote coming up shortly where they're voting to see if they can get rid of all GMOs in their valley. Okay, what is that? Which valley was
Willamette.
that? Say again?
Willamette.
Willamette, is that one of them? I've forgotten. I've read it a ton of times, but I always forget. So there are actually places in the U.S. now where they've said, no, there are no GMOs allowed in this area. And as the GMO free movement spreads, so will this spread. And so Missouri is jumping ahead of the game. And they're going to say, before we can get a valley that's going to exclude GMOs from our valley, we're going to just say no to all of it. And so all of Missouri will be protected, and we will be able to grow GMOs, and we will be able to practice our CAFOs or whatever, wherever we want, whenever we want, and no one will be able to stop it.
So how can we get this stopped here in Missouri? I mean,
Well,
because people are going to vote for that because of the way it sounds.
because of the way it's worded, yeah. Well, in 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to be out of Missouri, and you guys are going to be left here. And I don't say that to be rude, but I don't have the answer. I do know that the side that's promoting this, and the side that's promoting Monsanto's interests, is huge, and there are billions of dollars there. So how do we do this? How do we combat this sort of terminology, this sort of language? And of course, we're going against the big guns and the big boys. Well, I wish I knew the answer. If I knew the answer, things would be a lot different in the world right now. So,
Yeah, my son tells me I get real upset about different stuff, and he goes, Mom, it doesn't do any good to argue with somebody because he said, A, you're not in there, you're not a senator, you're not a lawyer, and he says it doesn't do you any good to, to argue with somebody because I get really upset, I'm like, yeah.
the other day when we were at the Spring Planning Festival, we were speaking to Dave Murphy, and he's the I'm not sure what he's the top guy in food democracy now. And someone said, well, how do we change this? It's changing something. Things might be changing. When I met those two ladies on the trail today, that might open avenues and doors. And when we met the lady yesterday in Aberdeen and gave her the seed packet, you know, just little by little. And I don't know in the end whether all of our conversation is going to save us from GMOs. I don't know whether we're going to be able to reclaim our country from GMOs, or whether it's going to continue and we're going to... I read an article that came out 3 or 4 weeks ago. There was a study that came out of was it Princeton University, and they have declared that the United States is no longer a representational form of government. It is in fact an oligarchy. That's what it is. They said we've done the studies and we've shown it's really, the United States is now being run by corporations, and the government act as puppets of the corporations, and you got to have tons of money to get in, and most of them get their money from these corporations, and then you do the bidding of the corporations. So they just came out and said, forget about being a democracy or republic, whatever word you use. It's not any of those things anymore. So are we going to be able to make a difference? I don't know. I don't know in the short term, but I do know that oppression always gets pushed aside, because eventually people stand up to it. Eventually people say no. Whether it's Rosa Parks in the back of the bus, keeping her seat, eventually things change, right? So it might be, you know, it took the children of Israel how many years? 400? Well, it was 400. Wasn't it 400 years in captivity? So maybe 400 years from now we'll get rid of GMOs. I don't know. But I do know that I can't sit back and just watch it happen. All right? So I'm going to go down just a little bit of a different avenue right now. Speaking of the children of Israel, I love taking pictures of churches, and I've been doing that finally when I was, probably might have been through California, when I finally thought, you know, I've got a rich resource right in front of me with all these churches. And I started taking pictures of all the churches as we ran down the road. And I now have pictures of hundreds and hundreds of churches with their signboards and their signs. Some of them very interesting, some of them very creative. And I realized that I don't think we're doing a very good... When we talk about GMOs, we always do it with the language of science. And science is the God that we hold up to either say we're for GMOs or we're opposed to GMOs. And I'm not opposed to the science. We need the science, and we need the scientists out there to do the studies. That's absolutely important. But I do think we're missing it with believers. I do think that we're not talking about this at church enough. I do think there's enough churched people that don't know anything about this. I was talking to Dave at the Planning Festival, and you said he was an ex-Amish guy who's now gone down a different route. And he said, yeah, what's his last name? Johansson. And he said that he was talking, I believe he said he was talking to some brethren in the Mennonite church, I believe. And he said that he went to them and said, what are we doing with GMOs? Why are we planting GMOs? And they said, Dave, it's just breeding. That's all it is. It's just breeding. And he said, no, it's GMOs. It's totally different than breeding. So let's